they believe they have special dispensation to speak about this president, and because of his color, because of his, in many ways, his connection to the left. It's in many ways the ways that they would not speak of Herman Cain, except I think behind closed doors. They feel like because it's empowered them to act out on their racism. And unfortunately, you can't keep that cork in the bottle. Most people who are racist don't feel that way about one group. They feel that way about every group but theirs. And there are, you don't have to just be, a white country redneck, gun-toter, kind of the classic stereotype racist, tacit KKK member to be a racist. There are racists of all nationalities and the like. But they tend to be pretty broad. Once you get them going, they don't like anybody. And so, because the president is actually currently, in their field of view, he's the main point of their attack, and they're used to kind of hiding their language a bit around him. But the problem is it squeaks out in other ways. Your anger and your weirdness about that, it has to go somewhere. And in Ben Shapiro's thing, I think this is less about him using the word, Jew hating or whatever, and it's just a dig at the black guy. Really.
Sure, but the idea that they would just say that, whereas before, I don't know, again, just like you said, it's something they would have said behind his back that they're now saying in front of everybody.
Right.
And if people are able to pick up on it, there's not a lot of people able to pick up on detail and subtlety or critical thinking. I watch these Republicans right now. You're talking about the future of the party.
Right.
In the short term, this thing will work because this situation with those children is just now starting to filter out to what's really going on in Central America versus that these are from Mexico. A lot of people just thought, oh, these kids are all from Mexico. Now we're all kind of knowing what the details are about the conditions in Central America. But the Republicans are going on shows, Catholic television. I flip the stations. I see a lot of stuff. You got Sean Duffy, representative, ex-Real World cast member from Wisconsin. He's on Catholic television, and this is the way he plays it. It's President Obama's fault because he told these people it was okay to come here, which he didn't, but this is what they say, that the trip is the dangerous part. And that the president has put these children in danger because he wanted them to be here, and that the trip was the dangerous part. And that once they're here or they're coming across the border, yes, we need to do some humanitarian things for them. Him, as a GOPer, is saying, well, yes, it's children and we have to help them, but we really do need to send them back. He completely ignored where they're coming from and the violence that's in that country.
Right, and the fact that they'd have to take a second trip if he deports them.
And it's the detail that nobody really wants to think about. We just see them all as a horde, just moving across, all brown people. They all look alike.
Well, curiously enough, and this kind of goes to what you're talking about, in Wisconsin, a Latino businessman who was just there to be kind of a backdrop human being for a local Republican. He was his name. I have to look up his name, but it was Dagoberto Ibarra. Okay, he was he called the president the N-word in the middle of an event. He was talking about, and interestingly enough, he used it, I believe, he didn't mean it in the pejorative. I think he was using it to point out the kind of language he believes is being used. It came across like, if you just kind of read it in the in the abstract, it's like, oh my God, this guy said it there, and that was the bad part of it. But he was talking about how nobody's really looking to fix the problems with immigration, and right now, if you're not white, you're selling drugs, you're smuggling, you're no good. If you're the people who come here from Germany, from the Soviet Union, they're all here illegally, but you don't see them because you're used to seeing people who are white. If you're white, you're okay. I don't think anything is doing anything. They all pass the buck. The Congress has done nothing, and you know why not? Because the N is in charge. And that's, I think he was making the point that that's how they view the president.
Yeah, that's how it's
right. And that, by the way, at that point, he walked off stage. That was the last thing he said.
Did he drop the mic?
One of the last
I think it was attached to the podium.
If any of these children that do get sent back, if we find out in the news such and such child was now murdered in Guatemala, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Now they'll come out, the GOP will say, look, Barack Obama helped murder these children. I mean, no matter what he will do, for them, this is a win-win if they can turn it all on. He encouraged them to come here, and now it's dangerous that they came here. He sent them back, and then some of them got murdered, and this is all his fault, and it's all on him. Regardless of the fact that they will not pass any kind, don't even have it for a vote, any kind of immigration that would have helped to loosen this up. Also heard, and I don't know it's out there, that there were flyers being passed out in Central America that Barack Obama's encouraging you to come. Please come. We will help you, whatever it was. Maybe those were put out by the people.
That was the idea that the drug cartel was doing that. If you were a Republican-related PAC and you had an opportunity, and by the way, I don't know, does anybody remember, of all the presidents that we've had, who was it that had the most involvement with anti-government forces and rebel groups and the use of arms in South and Central America? Is there, really? I don't recall personally. It's interesting that we don't think we have ongoing interests down there or connection to those ongoing interests. That somehow, when Oliver North got to wear his uniform after it had been stripped from him to a congressional, that was the last we heard of Iran-Contra and the Sandinistas and all of our connection to all the violence that was going on in Central America and our tacit support for certain groups like that. You think that just dried up at one point? You think that there's still not groups that have connections to that business? I'm not floating the conspiracy that somebody else passed those flyers out. I'm just saying that might be how we know.
I'm glad you said that, because that's what I was thinking and part of what I was hearing, and the fact that there are still very influential business people who do not side with
labor and
government that are down there.
Right.
Very, very wealthy people, industrialists. They'd like to own everything there. They'd like to destabilize things so that could happen, as it may have happened in Venezuela if they could have gotten away with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's more to all this. Tentacles out there always.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate the call. Let me grab the other caller too after the break, because we got to take a break. We're right up against it. So when we come back, we'll take our other callers. 773-763-9278 is our number. Rick Perry is looking to be the border president. This is going to be the angle to which he re-enters the race and reinvigorates himself. And there's no reason to believe that he won't be the guy that the Republicans go for. Wait till I tell you what the poll numbers say. We'll be back right after this.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278. Giddy up.
Giddy up.
Just in case you didn't realize that was crazy, he says giddy up.
Right. Let's continue with our callers. Who do we have still on?
We got Alan from Indiana on
Cool.
line too.
Hey, Alan. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi there, guys. Hey, did I miss out on your segment where you talked about the Democrats also criticizing our President Obama about, on the border? Maybe I did miss something because they, especially that House Representative Dominguez from Texas, he was making...
Yeah.
So maybe I missed it. So go ahead and tell me about it.
No, we didn't. Well, I don't want to redress the entire idea again, but it's not surprising that, there's a lot of variation, especially in the border areas where you've got on the same level that you have Mary Landrieu, who's very oil friendly, or you would have, very insurance friendly Democrats fighting the Affordable Care Act. It's not that there's single unidentifiable differences on where the expenditure should go, how it should be done, how the deportation should be done, for example. They're actually Democrats who don't believe that they believe that those people should be accepted as refugees and kept here. Others just disagree on how the processing should take place or how much funding we should put towards that. And certainly a lot of them have an issue about whether or not we put National Guard people on the border, which is specifically what Gohmert is calling for, along with Rick Perry. That's what he asked the president for specifically. The one difference in what the president was already pushing that Rick Perry had was that he wanted National Guard troops on the border, which would have zero effect on this particular element of immigration crisis. Because I don't know what you use the National Guard for if these people are just turning themselves in at the border. They're not, other than shooting them, I suppose. Or maybe making them afraid they will be shot, and that fear of being shot will keep them from crossing, which hasn't worked so far because that fear, I guess, still exists. There was a big militia outbreak at the, well, I'd say big, but it didn't, it actually fell apart quite quickly. But there was going to be a border securing militia group that was going to, walk around and shoot illegals who were coming across, and they apparently had a problem finding a commander. Is your question about whether or not I criticize Democrats at all? Is that where you're going, or is it the fact that the criticisms I think that are coming from Democrats are more methodology?
I was just tuning in your program.
Yeah.
And I heard about the Republicans, and honestly, I didn't hear you say anything about the Democrats. So.
No, well, and the reason I didn't bring it up mostly is because the Democratic criticism with the president about about how to handle this particular border issue are a tacit of normal Democratic government workings. They are, we're not discussing kind of the mechanics of regular governing. People disagreeing and in committee trying to come up with a good median point. Somebody presents a plan, another person has a problem with that plan, and they present an alternate to that plan. That's completely reasonable. I don't have a problem with that. What we're talking about today specifically is that the leading voices in the GOP are calling for warships on the border. In waterways, by the way, that won't hold up a ship of that size. But that doesn't, it's the sort of tacit fear-based idiocy that seems to be driving the conversation on that side, unfortunately. I don't have a problem with critique of the president's plan or of an alternate possibility if it's based in reality. But unfortunately, that's not what we're talking about. And even Rick Perry's his one request from the president was more National Guard troops on the border specifically for this crisis. And it has zero effect on how this is actually working. These children and these women walk right up to border agents and turn themselves in. They don't sneak across. They're not watching them walk right up. Isn't going to be any different if a border agent does it or a National Guard troop does it. You can't shoot somebody on the other side of the border, and you can't shoot a non-violent person who hasn't declared their immigration status to another human being yet. And by the time it's done, the legality of being a refugee or something else clicks in. If you allow for that, then what you do is you create a situation where National Guard troops could at some point be positioned at any kind of, not just borders, but airports and the like, and could just pick off anybody who steps on the soil without ever asking them why they're here, which is ridiculous. And everybody knows it's ridiculous. But the presentation of how they're saying this should work out, they're doing it from the point of view of this sounds sensible. Now, I believe personally that Louis Gohmert wants the disabling of the interstate commerce clause for this circumstance because he thinks in his weird little brain that this is a great way to attack Obamacare on the interstate commerce aspect. He's still got that on the brain as an effective stop for allowing insurers to buy across, people to buy insurance across state lines. And if you can chip away at the commerce clause, you can somehow do it that way. And so by disabling it, it's another protection for Texas from the Affordable Care Act. He thinks that's his plan, which is also goofy. Again, I don't mind if they have a real criticism about how to deal with it, but the question is, do you have an option to deal with it at all? And they seem to think that this is the dealing with it is the last thing on the list. The important thing is the most crude politics you can actually make happen, and that's my issue. Not that there are varying degrees of opinion or that anybody has a criticism about the actual mechanics of how to do it. If you're engaged in working on it, I'll take all the criticism you want. If you actually care about solving the issue, that's what the purpose of learned debate in this country is for. But that's not where we find ourselves right now. Where we find ourselves is that the governor of Texas is asking for resources that he wants to use elsewhere for other state projects under the guise that he needs them for an area that doesn't even require them. And when you have people having issue with, for example, the NSA spying and the like, and where the president, what he knew and when he knew it, and whether the last president knew about it at the time, and how this has tacitly been going on with the Congress and the Senate being aware for quite a long time as well. That, I believe, is worth suing for the information, for example. I don't think they would get anything, but I think the activity is important because it would let loose other things. It would create more precedent for more openness around these kind of issues. But what is the House of Representatives suing the president for right now?
Are you waiting for me?
Yeah. Specifically, what is the lawsuit?
I think they're way off. I'm telling you, I think they don't have a leg to stand on. And but we do have to help these young people and whoever's on the border.
Right.
And you know who's helping them? The churches. The churches are doing a lot to help these people. The Christians, and maybe there's other groups that are helping them too. So whatever we can do, we got to help these people. But somewhere along the line, I think we're going to have to make some move about these people that are, that the parents that are sending these kids, or whatever's happened. Something has to be done. I mean, we just can't wring our hands and say, Well,
I don't think that's it. I don't think that's what's happening. I think the immigration bill that's actually could be put up for a vote and would pass Congress right now would address some of those issues, would certainly create a more stabilized immigration policy for the country. And then the idea that these kids aren't refugees, in my estimation, is absurd as well. I think it's clear that they are coming from what is equivocally a war zone. Even though the war is a drug war, it is still, your organs don't care why the bullet was thrown into them. It doesn't matter if it's about nationalist policies, religious differences, or because, there are cartels fighting a local government. It doesn't matter. And this is a war on the same level for resources and control as any other war that ends up with civilians dead. These children are showing up, and they are, for all practical purposes, refugees. The question becomes, how do we help? Do we help in Guatemala? Do we work with the UN and with our own, ambassadors and the like to create a more stabilized circumstance there to stop this? Or do we just absorb part of it and then start stopping what's, that coming here at their border, through other means? It's a tough thing to do. But the answer is not going to be ships, you know what I mean? And that's silly. And I agree, by the way, that there are many people, lovely people, who are trying to come up with options and ways of helping these people. And there are also people in Murrieta, California, of course, who were standing outside waving flags and shouting USA and saying take them away from here and America stand your ground and don't and nobody wants you to these children. Vamonos, you're in contempt of Congress, criminals, go home, we have no money for you. Another protester approached a tan police officer who tried to hold back a crowd saying, "Can you take the day off from me, boss? These are your kids too, man." Saying because he looked brown, he was protecting them because he was illegal as well. And so this has to be dealt with. There's no question. It is a difficult circumstance, but you deal with it. You come up with strategies, you try them, and if they fail, you come up with new strategies. But you don't simply, first of all, present an obnoxious plan for, militarizing the border, and then don't even bring it up for a vote. That's the funny thing. That's the only plans they're coming up with are absolutely crazy, but who cares because it will never see the light of day in a legislative level. I mean, it used to be that Fox News was sort of a tacit PR arm of the Republican Party. I believe now it is the exact opposite. That Fox is actually the one pushing for certain legislative things to get done or not done, and the GOP is acting as mouthpieces for them because Gohmert and his ilk are quoting from people who have shown up on Fox News, and it's as much Fang Pi as anything that shows up, which is Chinese for butt air.
Hit the delay.
No, you can say that. As anything that's said on Fox, the difference is, no one's going to take what Bill O'Reilly says and legislate it specifically any more than they're going to take what Louis Gohmert says and legislate it. There's nothing coming up to a vote anyways, except for an extension of a Bush tax cut. That came up for a vote. That actually made it. Which expired, by the way, I believe last fall. And interestingly enough, we started hitting budget surpluses when it expired. Go figure. We'll be back right after this with more of the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. And who the next Republican presidential candidate will be. Will be.
Sports Radio program, Mega Worldwide. 773-763-9278.
Okay.
It's a twofer.
Yeah, I like it.
Man-O-War and then that guy.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was actually Man-O-War. I have to confess I don't know their songs as well as one might.
As one metal nerd might.
Yeah. I mean,
underground today.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't miss the. Believe me, whenever I see the album covers, I know it's them.
With the faceless warrior.
Yes.
They look like He-Man figures.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Much.
Yeah. There's when I was recording my first album with 01, we were in the studio and the engineer had a picture of Man-O-War on the wall, and it had underneath it "How Not to Do It." Hey. So, okay, a couple things. One is, where's all this heading? The GOP is showing no signs of tapping out or flagging it. There's the question about back and forth about whether the Tea Party rules the party or the conservative establishment rules the party is fairly consistent. You know, it kind of comes around in 2-month cycles with no real decision. You know, it's more like a weird wrestling match between the two where everybody goes up and down and it all seems a bit like kabuki theater. The ongoing, though, we're heading into a real practical run towards 2012. Like this is, 2016 rather. We're getting in that situation. I'm literally looking at the field of Republican hopefuls, and it looked so similar. I automatically went 2012. Is that in 2016 is coming very quickly, and we're going to start seeing some real playing, and in many ways we kind of have with this border security push that Rick Perry is going. By the way, he has in a recent poll of who's the most, who's got a good chance of it, who would you vote for? New Hampshire poll. Paul Ryan, and I guess and Portman all come in behind Santorum. Santorum has double what they have. Now I wouldn't get too worried because they all have 1% and Santorum has 2%. And who you would vote for? Jeb Bush has 6%. Bobby Jindal's at 5%. Mike Huckabee's at 4%. Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio are 3% and 2%. That's a kind of that gives you more of a flavor of the size of the constituency that takes those people seriously compared to the rest of the party, which is actually quite hopeful. Although it's stacked, so it ends up being 6%. Really think that Rubio, 7% think Rubio, Santorum, or Cruz would be a reasonable president. 7% of your local New Hampshire Republicans actually believe these people are highly qualified country-running people. It's frightening on that face. But at the sliver level, I'm going to let that some of them are kidding. If you remove one person from the list, Chris Christie is the frontrunner. If you take one person out of the mix, Chris Christie is the frontrunner at 19%. It shuffles the numbers around a little bit. He's the 19% choice. Now, the problem with Chris Christie is he also has the highest number of Republicans saying they would never vote for him. When asked which,
He's barely rational.
yes, when asked which potential White House hopeful they would never support, more Republicans named Chris Christie than any other politician. 36% don't, and he topped the GOP respondents were asked they would definitely not vote for him. But he has 19% ahead of, I think, the follow-up is Rand Paul probably has somewhere around like 8% or something along those lines, and it shuffles the other numbers a bit. That's only if one person is removed from the questionnaire. Who do you think that one person, that if they take him off the list, it pushes Chris and who, by the way, when he is in, gets 39% of the vote. 39%, far and away the front runner. Now, when he's in, he gets 39%, and it is a he.
999.
Christie has 7% when he's in the race. Rand Paul has 7% when he's in the race. But he himself has 39%. Who do you think that person is, John?
999.
No, it's not Herman Cain. Cain didn't make the list on this run of it.
Sarah Palin.
No, it's a he. Unless you know something about Sarah Palin that I don't.
No.
Come on, he's you know. I mean, if you were a Republican and you're like, who's my guy? Who's the guy that represents me? 39%. No, Paul Ryan's got 2% still.
Oh, he's one of the 2%.
Yeah, Paul Ryan's not even. No, beg your pardon. When this guy's in the race, he has 1%. Paul Ryan has 1% of the New Hampshire GOP, and across the board. By the way, this extrapolates out across it's indicative of Republicans in the country.
Ronald Reagan Jr.
Nope. It's not. And by the way, I will eliminate Jeb Bush is 6%. Mitt Romney, 39% of Republicans asked for who they would want to run for president in 2016. Mitt Romney. I'm telling you, I don't, on so many fronts, get it. Because, I mean, part of it just feels like, you know, some of them it's sour grapes and they just want to do over. Like, by electing him, it would erase the Obama's last 4 years in their head at that point. It would kind of like, it would be a bandage on the wound and prove that he is a winner and that they weren't wrong the first time. You know what I mean? They're just sticking with it in spite of it. But in all honesty, 39%. By the way, Paul Ryan, who only gets 1%, has the highest favorable numbers of the entire field. 55% of these Republicans like Paul Ryan. They like him. Only 1% believe he could be president. He has the same numbers, by the way, as far as electability and likability that Sarah Palin had. And in many ways was accused of being the male Sarah Palin during the, you know, because even in spite of his, obviously being more articulate than Sarah Palin, his numbers add up about as well as hers do. I mean, this is amazing. By the way, Chris Christie has a 46% favorable rating. 36% say they hate him, so that's what skews his numbers. Hillary Clinton, by the way, when she's at a poll, 59% think that she will is the person she would vote for. 14% choose Joe Biden. 8% say Senator Elizabeth Warren. Bernie Sanders gets 5%. Andrew Cuomo, who's thought to be Hillary's biggest challenger, gets 3%. And Mark Warner of Virginia gets 1%. And I just think he was a kind of an also-ran as far as putting this poll together. So, I mean, this could mean we're looking at Romney versus Hillary in the next election cycle.
Maybe try it again.
You know, power seeking power. I mean, it's been done before. Nixon reran, right? You know, it's not that uncommon, even especially on the Republican side. Give it a second shot. All these other guys are running, and they have no chance. I mean, sillies. You know, many of them, by the way, they run because it's a living. You know what I mean?
That's what you do. You go, you raise funds.
Yeah, exactly. There's a certain, you know, evangelical core of Santorum's followers who will really want an evangelical on the bill. So they'll push to get him on there, and they'll get all his signatures and take care of everything so that he gets up there. And it basically ends up being a publicity stint for his, you know, weird, you know, we only show him in churches movies and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But by a huge lead, Mitt Romney, 2016. Now, with the high favorability rating, but the low electability rating of Paul Ryan, who's going to be his running mate? Do we have to? I mean, are we doing flat tax and Robin again? Is this are we going to see him? Is there going to have to be a bunch of like really delicate meetings where Paul Ryan bows out to spend more time with his family? It's amazing. 39%, far and away ahead of the rest of the field, including Chris Christie, who was, before his bridge scandal, was going to walk into the White House, making giant noises, as he did. We'll be back right after this with a happy ending, which that almost to me is a bit of a happy ending, quite frankly. Yeah. Because, wow. Loser. We'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Looks like we had Steve from the Gold Coast.
Oh, cool. Okay. We'll get him before we start the happy ending. We'll get that, and then we'll do short happy ending song.
Sorry, Hal, we got Steve from the Gold Coast on the line.
Yeah, I said we'll grab him as soon as we come back, and then we'll do the short happy ending song.
Boom.
Awesome.
We had a feller named Eli on the line to Repubs by votes.
Okay. We're going to really squeeze the happy ending now. Because Steve is a talker.
Yes, he is.
Which is good, but
Just say thanks for the call and I'll drop him, bud.
okay, cool, thanks.
Welcome back to the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Yippee, it's happy ending time.
Let's grab two callers real quick. We got two callers on the line. I want to get to them before we get to the end of the show. And so, but if both of them could keep the comments high and tight, that'll help us out a lot. Who do we have first?
We got Steve from the Gold Coast.
Cool.
line one.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah, so I'll make a couple of quick points. One, with regard to the issue of Romney, I mean, the Republicans are going to face the same question that they faced in the past. On the one hand, how to appeal to the center of independents as largest cohort in terms of growing voters? And how do you appeal to them while not alienating the base? The base doesn't like a moderate. The base honestly believes that some far right-wing nuts can win the election in this country, and that we have a silent majority. So forget what all the polls say. You know, really we can win.
Right.
And they're going to turn around and say, the reason that Mitt Romney lost last time was that we nominated someone who was too moderate. And this is the storyline that the Republican Party.
Well, that's what's going to fuel the other people who are against him. But they are outweighed right now by the establishment groups, especially these old states where they kind of key up who's going to be the runner.
Absolutely. I mean, in states that, frankly, are not representative of this nation demographically, but less so than ever before. I mean, states that don't have any major cities, don't have demographic representation in terms of race, ethnicity, income, and so forth. I mean, really, Iowa.
Right. That's what they're running up against. I got to grab the other call, Steve, because I want to make sure we get it, and we're running out of time on this. This is our shortest segment, so but I appreciate the call.
Eli and Elgin.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Eli, welcome. Real quick.
Welcome, thank you. I have my thought is that this is called fix it in politics.
Mm-hmm.
If Mitt had the bumper stickers, the fix it in last year, you would have seen it everywhere. It's the way they do their country club deals. You know, they think they could buy their way in. They think they could buy the results of the poll. You saw that. They were amazed and astounded that everybody they had bought, all the polls they bought, steered them wrong. And if you use that fix it in thought, you will see it's prevalent throughout the entire right-wing party.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I mean, I think that there's an element, interestingly enough, that I think not only they believe they can buy their way into a controlling point in the populace, but also that they actually believe that that's the only way you should be able to get in either. That's, the principle is, if you had the means or you were the kind of person we would want in here, they're playing the country like a country club.
Exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can come here from another country if you're brown, if you want to do service jobs. That's how the country club used to be run, and we'd like to get back to that, please. Thank you. And that's, it's amazing. Appreciate the call. Okay, it's happy ending time.
Yeah, you were.
I was born to lick your face. I was born to rock, but you were born to rub me first.
Okay. First one isn't super exciting, but it's kind of a good news. Is that China's biggest newspaper said that China and the United States must avoid a new Cold War in their international relationship in the wake of high-level talks in Beijing between senior leaders of the world's two largest economies. That's actually a really good sign, because the version of Cold War we would have with China is not an arms ratchet up like we had with the Soviets, but an economic ratchet up, where the undermining of labor and the cost of stuff here versus a tariff war essentially, which would do more damage to both countries over time than even us nuking ourselves to show off our nuclear arms. If you ever want to watch that insane video of where all the nuclear bombs that have been dropped in the world by which country have been dropped, we bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that's true, but we bombed ourselves dozens of times. The United States was forever blowing up, bombs on our own soil. And there's just as much kind of damage to getting in this kind of tit for tat with China about these kind of things. And it's nice to see that they're aware of the potential for it over there as well. Again, that's just mine. I don't know if you guys have one, by the way, happy ending wise.
Dennis does. I am not hindered by happy ending tonight.
All right. Fire away, Dennis.
All right. This is true here. The article came out earlier this week. Scientists say, you're not going to believe me, but smelling farts prevents cancer. That's what it says here in an article.
Your own?
Anybody's, I think. I don't know. It just says here.
Well, I would disagree with that. The anybody's part of it. I think your
I
own.
am helping you every week, Dennis.
Here's the thing.
I'm saving you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
No, I think it's your own. I think there's an element to it. Nature knows what it's doing, and it's giving you signs of whether what you're consuming is good for you or bad for you in what
I
comes
think you're
out.
reading into this. I think we need to just go to let's go to how it's written.
No, I think I am stating how it's written. I think because that would be because why would nature give you something that you'd have to chase other people for, and especially
Because
when
the
the
Bible tells me so.
no, because the timing would be off. You know what I mean? You can't. It's not like everybody does it at 9 a.m. You know what I mean? You couldn't line up and it's your own. It has to be your own.
It's
What happens when you line up at 9 a.m.?
a compound called AP39 slowly delivers very small amounts of this gas specifically to a big one word that I can't read.
AP39. That sounds
There you
like Balthorium G.
Thank you, Johnny.
Rotten egg smell could help battle heart disease. That's what it is. The AP39 slowly delivers very small amounts of the gas specifically to the mitochondria. Is that the word you're having trouble with?
Yeah.
Our results indicate that if stress cells are treated with AP39, and they have a picture of, I don't know why they have a picture of a Chinese man in this article in The Guardian. They have a picture of a Chinese guy on a scooter with his hand over his face. Like he's behind a carload of people breaking wind. Yeah. Well, you know, again, nature knows what it's doing, which is probably why it's annoying me. By the way, one of the other happy ending things is kind of health related in that regard, which is this has been the week that killed a Republican myth that Obamacare isn't really going to get the uninsured covered. That law is failing. That the law is failing in its primary mission. So much for that. There was the Urban Institute. Number of uninsured adults continues to fall under the ACA, down by 8 million in June of 2014. 8 million more. And guess which states are doing better than the other states? And one of the reasons why that number isn't falling even faster. I'm going to give you a hint: Medicaid expansion. But in the states where Medicaid expansion is allowed and they are following by it, the uninsured rate has dropped from 28% to 17%. In the states where they didn't expand it, it went from 38 to 36%. So basically no change within the margin of error. So again, one of the reasons why Louis Gohmert's floating this mess with the Commerce Clause and interstate commerce so that we can, we can set up a specific tax and start making our own laws about taxation. It's a backdoor way of trying to get to the Affordable Care Act. Apparently, Nixon's more Nixon tapes were released.
Yeah.
And in it, check this out. Nixon argues that gays are born gay. Let me say something right.
He thought he was really progressive.
Yeah. Let me say something before we get off the gay thing. It's a shame there's not video. I don't want my views misunderstood. I'm the most tolerant person on that of anybody in this shop. They have a problem. They're born that way. You know that. That's all. I think they are. But my point is that Boy Scout leaders, YMCA leaders, and others bring them in that direction, and teachers. And if you look over the history of societies, you will find, of course, that some of the highly intelligent people, Oscar Wilde, Aristotle, etc., 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 are all homosexuals. Nero, of course, was in a public way in with a boy in Rome. Then he says, by God, I'm not going to have a situation where we pass along a law indicating, well, now kids just go out and be gay. They can do it. Just leave them. They can do it. Just leave them alone. That's a lifestyle I don't want to touch. And it's interesting that he used the word lifestyle kind of intersected with this belief that he believes it is inborn. And I would say that in a society that doesn't recognize, and especially at the time, and many people still today, don't recognize that being gay is inborn, is something you are intrinsically, creates a situation where the quote-unquote lifestyle around it is marginalized and more damaging. Just the way if you outlawed heterosexuality in large portions of the country or made it, on a societal level very damaging or whatnot, that the club life that straight people engage in would be far more dangerous and result in less intimacy. Because you're not allowed. You can take someone home for the night, but if you take them home to meet your family, you're going to get in trouble. Like, that creates, quote-unquote, the lifestyle aspect that is negative. So the safest and most family-friendly and most loving thing you could do is allow people to be who they are. And then you'll find more and more that the sideline aspects of their lifestyle that you don't like start to fade as they're allowed to... Thank you, whoever was in the room with Nixon at the time. Thanks so much for listening to the House Parts Radio program, Mega Worldwide. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Dennis. We'll see you guys next week.